Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to those of you who are joining from where Byron is sitting. Today, I'm speaking with my first ever marketing professor. Despite being, I've been practicing marketing for the last almost 15 years now. I've never been in touch with an actual professor. And my answers has always been, well, it depends if I were to give an advice. And it's only within the last 6 months I've actually discovered that somebody took the effort and actually did work to find out something that remains to be actually scientific true about marketing. Byron, so I'm very happy that you've said yes to join us today.
It's lovely to be here.
We're super honored that you decided to take your time here. But Byron, as I only discovered you like within the last 6 months, and I've been going deep since then. But for those who've never heard about you or the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, what is it that you guys have been doing the last many years?
Or why am I here? Why are you even interested in the Ehrenberg Bass Institute? Because we do what we call old-fashioned science. We do the sort of science out at high school, and that turned out to be quite a revolution in marketing.
That's not the worst cliffhanger.
Not that big. I mean, every single discipline. I mean, I think we get quite complacent when I realize that every single discipline, our world around us has been utterly transformed in the last few hundred years, and a huge part of that, all the technology we're using now, in part owes its existence to scientific discoveries. So probably not really, we should never have been so arrogant in marketing to think that we couldn't, science couldn't touch us.
Yeah,
but we should. I think you said
when you think about the amount of
academic famous were, if you'd ask them something, they'd go, "Well, it depends." But on what? It depends is okay as an answer, but we should say on what. That's what scientific laws do. That's what it does depend on and what it doesn't depend on.
Yeah, and if you think about the amount of resources being poured into marketing across the world every single day, it's a massive use of resources all the time. But I read that you guys were the biggest institute of marketing. Is it not a big, can you say, area of science, marketing in general?
No, when we say the biggest, I mean, we're tiny compared to a Kantar or Nielsen, whatever, but they don't do scientific research. They do market research. They're collecting, as you say, billions of dollars are spent every year by marketers collecting data on, who are our customers, what do they buy, do they like us. So we never had a shortage of data, but we did have a shortage of scientists who would look at that and go, well, I wonder if I can find some scientific laws, some patterns that keep on repeating, because we've done that in other areas. A few hundred years ago we started doing that, like killings, and that turned out really well. That really worked, right? And prior to that, humans are really good at developing theories, but 99.99% of every theory that has been put up to every story of why is that mountain there? Why does water flow downhill? Why are there different species? All of those theories turn out to be, wrong. And we only get onto the right track when we find scientific laws. And then that suddenly constrains us because our theories have to fit the laws. And if laws, they can't be right. And but that's what the Ehrenberg Bass Institute does. We discovered, some important scientific laws. And then we beaver away and try to work out, well, what does that mean then for practice? What practice because of that?
That sounds very helpful, and at least for me, there's some of the things in this How Brands Grow book that was, but like simultaneously inspiring and provoking, or like left me kind of disagreeing, which is always like that when your brain starts working in that way. It's a good piece of writing. But Byron, what have been sort of, if you were to mention a few of these laws that you have discovered by now, that has been kind of, let's call them the most famous or like the most impactful so far?
Well, the most famous, and that's a bit of a scientific geeky joke because I don't think any of these laws are famous, is the double jeopardy law. And It's a very classic scientific law in the sense that it's quite simple and it generalizes. That's what a scientific law is, something that
Absolutely.
In fact, I tell a little story. We used to have for new marketing scientists, people who were going to come and do a research degree with us, hoping to discover things. We would we have a qualifying test and things. And one of that is presenting in front of the institute. And we used to set a topic, and for ages the topic was, you've got to present and tell us what's the difference between market research and marketing science. People would do all these presentations. But we had this really bright, he's now a very eminent professor in New Zealand, Malcolm Wright, who did his PhD with us. And they said, there's a one-word answer. And I went, okay, smarty pants, that sounds very cool. We've never had anyone stand up and do a one-word answer. What's the one word? Generalizability. Oh yeah, right. Because market research report replies to like you ask how many subscribers does Netflix have or something like that, and it's very specific. You get a specific result and applies for that day or that country. It doesn't tell you can't use that in 10 years time. But scientific laws, they repeat, they generalize. So I always joke that engineers, say you're a Danish engineer and you get posted to Argentina, you never ask, well, what's Argentinian gravity like? The laws of physics are still the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so you ask what's most famous, and that is double jeopardy. And double jeopardy it generalizes. We see it everywhere. We see it B2B, B2C. We see it actually in quite bizarre places like in attitudes. In fact, that's where it was first observed. It's anywhere that people have to make a choice between competing things that really are competing. I mean, they'll all do, right? They're all cars, or they're all payroll software, or so you're choosing between, well, in marketing we would say brands, right? But can also apply from choosing between TV stations to watch or comedies to listen to. And when people do this, you can think there are things that are more popular, more market share than others, right? Big brands, small brands. And so, a basic marketing thing is, what's the difference between a big brand and a small brand? And prior to that, the theory was, because there are really two things that make up your sales in any time period. It's how many customers you have and then how much business they give you. And it was always thought, well, you could either have a lot of customers who gave you a little bit of business each, or you could have a few customers who gave you a lot of business each, or any other combination of these. And the double jeopardy law is like really mind-blowing, because it says, no, you always get the same. Right? You always get the same pattern, and that is the bigger brands will have a lot more customers. And they will also buy a little bit more often. But if two brands, what that means is if two brands are the same size, they must have about the same number of customers. And those customers must have about the same amount of loyalty, right? The two brands would be. And so that is a big surprise, because we used to love talking about niche brands, and niche is not supposed to be just another word for meaning small. It meant you've got an unusually small customer base who are highly loyal. And double jeopardy says, well, there can't be many of those, because there'd be no double jeopardy pattern. And it turns out, when we look for niched brands, they hardly ever exist. And when they are, they're not even terribly niched. So there's no such thing as a small brand having a huge customer base. There's no thing as a big brand, having a small customer. It just does not happen. And that leads to a whole lot of other things. There's like another law, the retention double jeopardy, which says your retention rate, how many customers you lose in a year is predictable. And that depends on how big are you. If you're really big, you'll obviously lose more customers because you've got more.
Yeah.
But it'll be a slightly smaller percentage of your customer base.
Have you done any research into why this, or like the research, or how should call it, the science shows the bigger brands see more loyalty? But what is the reasoning behind this?
Oh, why does it occur?
I have a few ideas.
Okay, this is where you build theory that has to fit the laws.
Yeah.
The theory has been called availability theory or market-based asset theory. And the reason market-based asset theory is it says that really the difference between when you've got a group of competing brands and one is, say, much bigger than the others, it must have more mental and physical availability. So it's more available, it's easier to buy for more people. And that means it will have a lot more customers in any time period. And those customers will be a little bit more loyal. Or the way I like to put it is, for those customers, it's just a little bit harder to get away from. It's just so much easier to repeat pictures. Whereas the really small brand, even the people who do know the really small brand, they're also likely to also know the bigger brands. And so for them, they've got more choice, and that gives you the double jeopardy, right? Sometimes they buy that small brand, but they also sometimes buy the big brand.
I was thinking if there's also a social component to it here, along the lines of you never get fired from buying IBM.
People have tried to sort of layer that on, and I'm not disputing that, but it's not a big part of it. No.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Because if that was the case, you'd see really extreme double jeopardies in very sort of symbolic categories, or very risky categories, and we don't.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that was my go-to intuition.
I'm not saying that there might be nothing in that, but when you look at this, is the real world's a weird place. We come up with these theories and we think that but you got to look at the real world. You got to look at empirical laws to give us a sense of, well, how much is that in the mix? And the answer is, well, it might be there, and it might be a bit more for some categories, but it's not a big thing in it. It's a bit like people talk about Apple's ecosystem, that if they run on the same operating system. If you buy one Apple product, it makes it easier to buy another one.
Yeah.
That must give Apple, much, much higher loyalty. But when we look at it, because we now know it should have high loyalty, because Apple's a very big brand.
Doesn't get much bigger.
We don't see much beyond that, right? So the real reason that Apple's got high loyalty is because it's got lots of mental and physical availability, easy to buy for lots of people. And then you go, but what about the ecosystem locking them in? And the answer is, it might be a little bit of teeny bit on top, but it's not actually a huge part of the thing.
Yeah, Byron, for those students who haven't studied physical and mental availability, in simple terms, how would you explain this to them?
Okay, first of all, I think I'll start with the easy one. I think there's still some people who get confused. Physical availability is just the ease of the product or services for people to buy. So that does vary in different categories. So for some things, it'll be that they've got an app on their phone, or you can pay using PayPal, or another will be they've got a car park near me. It depends. If I'm driving there, then the car park becomes important. If I'm going to like the order the taxi or Uber on an app, then having the app on my phone and it connected to my credit card is important. These are just all ways that you make it easier for people to buy you. And bigger brands have a lot more of that physical availability. McDonald's is a lovely example, right? In most Western countries, don't walk too far and you can find a McDonald's. And they're open, a lot of them 24 hours. So
or do you see the same kind of brands in the supermarket wherever you go?
Yeah, so big brands have a lot more physical availability, and particularly there are some other laws related to this, but big brands get physical availability in places that are not just like supermarkets where there's lots of other brands. They'll also be in places where there aren't many other brands, like a vending machine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that all those places aren't big volume compared to a Walmart or Aldi or something. They have that special thing that you don't have a lot of other competition there.
Yeah, so it's quite nice.
Okay, so that's the physical availability, which is just ease of purchase for people. But then there's mental availability, and my colleague Jenny Romnick likes to say that the biggest search engine in the world is between people's ears. And a classic example of this is going into a pharmacy or a wine store or supermarket. You buy a few things, but there's tens of thousands of options looking at you. And what we are amazingly good at doing is screening out. We just don't see most stuff. Because we have the thing that we want, the brands, which is like the brands we know. And so that's mental availability, that the brands in it, when someone's about to potentially buy the category, for a lot of people, it's really easy to think of or see, notice. Right? It doesn't get screened out. It doesn't get, like, why did you not buy that? Well, I didn't think of it. I didn't even see one.
Is it because people only carry around one brand per category or something like that?
No. People have repertoires. They have multiple brands, but you don't hold all the brands.
No.
It's a lovely if you say to someone, if you do this like a little experiment, if you say to someone, I'm going to ask you a question, you've got to answer really, 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 really quickly, okay? As fast as you can. Right. How many car brands are there? And a lot of people go, 7.
Yeah.
And there's more than 7. There's 80, 90 that you could like go into town and buy now. Why'd you say 7? And the answer is because they quickly think of a few.
Yeah.
And there's got to be more than that. Like, so they think of 3. There's got to be more than that. So I'll say 6.
Yeah.
But what it shows, it's impossible for us to think of all the. There are. I had some students doing a presentation only yesterday. I think they were looking at financial services, for banks, really big.
Yeah.
And there's something like 70-something banks in Australia, actual full banks with a license. And then there's hundreds of thousands of other, brokers and finances, something like, whoa. But in Australia, so there's 70 banks, but there's 4, we call the big 4, and for a good reason. Those 4 have something like 80% of the banking market. So they have tons of mental and physical availability.
Yeah.
Whereas
This
Sunshine Coast Bank doesn't.
Yeah, I would love to ask you how kind of these mental and physical availability. So say you started in my job, a 50 people software company. How do you then translate these general laws into kind of a playbook or a strategy? How would you start to translate what you've found to be true in science to kind of just your marketing?
There's no simple answer for that, and that's why.
No. I didn't expect that.
Well, it requires creativity, imagination, and also a deep understanding. So let me do a plug now for how brands grow for executives up there. That's a 4-day course we're doing in Singapore and Europe.
Oh, nice.
And that's exactly what people come to. I think everyone who comes to the course will have read How Brands Grow. But what they're doing is going, well, but I know of it. I get it. So, I get it, but I don't
spoon feed it to us, Byron.
I think it so deeply that when I encounter a new novel thing, or I'm choosing between 2 potential strategies, that I can work out what actually really would fit. What would the laws? How would I use them to make decisions? So we're always, but as I say, it requires deep understanding. It requires creativity and imagination. Let me give you one of the most simple, because you're a B2B. I'm a B2B marketer too, right? In fact, this How Brands Grow for Executives is the very first thing we've ever done where an individual buy from us. Normally corporations join as a small commission study of their distinctive assets or something. So we are a B2B. And so as a little bit, what do you all right, we've got to have more mental and physical availability. So we have to work on being famous and doing things like podcasts all the time, because there's 7 billion people on the planet. There are new people joining marketing every single day. There are tens of thousands of universities pumping out graduates, and they're teaching them the wrong thing. They're not teaching them this, right? So you've got all these people so it's enormous. So we have to constantly work at building fame for the discoveries, the laws. And then, yes, we have to be more physically available. So we're based in Adelaide, Australia. So we send people on planes a lot.
Yeah.
Because we're a professional service thing. People require, things like this are great. Hundreds of people can, hello. No, but, we need more than that. And so it is the same thing. I think I realized some years ago, I thought, we have more PhDs on staff than way more than even a giant like Nielsen. Right? So, you sort of, we should tell people this. Everyone should, I thought, that's not really the issue. Right?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone thinks that Nielsen or their market research provider is sort of unqualified. No, the Uruguay Bass's problem, being a small brand, is not many people know us or think of us.
Yeah.
If you're a company like Kraft, you'll probably have several Nielsen people who actually work in your offices.
Yeah.
But they're there, like not 24 hours a day, but they're there, 5 days a week. wow, that's availability. So we have to think of clever ways of improve ways be tiny, but we have to think of ways of making that just a little bit easier. And so for you, for software, it's exactly the same. I mean, you're up against, I presume, things like the Microsofts and things who have.
Yeah, Adobe stuff as well.
Adobe, yeah, who have tens of thousands, I'm thinking, of salespeople who are visiting.
Maybe one thing is then a practical question always becomes, I only have this marketing budget. So I know I need to radically increase the awareness about us.
Yes.
With this physical and mental availability. But how do I then, with the limited budget I have, then choose between the different options that I can go for?
Well, so let's think of that double jeopardy, right? So double jeopardy says you can't grow without increasing penetration. You cannot grow without increasing the size of your customer base. Although I've heard CEOs say this, like in fact, speaking of Australian banks, there was a CEO of a very large Australian bank who said, "We don't need any more customers. We can grow the business by getting more." And I know you can't. And I'm sorry, if you stop trying to acquire customers, you're going to start shrinking because, every day you're going to lose customers.
Yeah, people
die. Exactly. So it's not optional, right? So when you know it's not optional, then you're looking at, okay, how do I spend my budget? And you look at everything, you go, well, how much reach is this going to give me? Right? So I've got two options. One will give me twice the reach of the other one. Well, I like the one that gives me twice the reach. I like the option also that's reaching people that we don't reach at the moment, because it's really easy. We get someone as a customer, we get their name, we get their email. Now we can email them. Great. But how do I reach people who don't have their email?
Yeah.
And so the double jeopardy tells you don't have the luxury of saying, "Oh, it's okay, I'll just deal with the people I've got." You must gain reach. And so that does tell you a lot. Do you remember in the days when Facebook started and everyone was really, key, all brands were like, we've got to get people to like us and help our, what were they called? Were they called friends, I think?
Yeah, they're called friends on Facebook and connections on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and so this was and then once people got their head around double jeopardy and went, oh, they've got to increase penetration. Well, wait on, these Facebook friends, this could be we're going to be talking to the same people over and over, isn't it? And who's going to befriend a brand? Who's going to click like on a brand? It's going to be our heaviest buyers, isn't it? Yeah. So actually, this is not a great, just trying to work through our friend. We're just going to reach people that for us are the easiest people to reach.
Yeah.
They're the people who already notice us already. And this was a big shock to the industry, but and Facebook too, first of all. But then they realized, actually, what you need to do is spend money on Facebook to advertise and reach people who aren't your friends.
Yeah, then you can select new friends. But Byron, you said the concept of reach.
It tells you that some strategies just are doomed.
So you said you've reached. Do you mean do you assume that it's qualified reach then, or is it just broad reach? In lack of better term.
Well, it's reaching people who can possibly buy from.
Yeah.
Right? I always the joke. You don't sell sales to people who don't have a yacht.
No, absolutely not.
But that's often broader than you'd be surprised. Or a company today is too small to buy your software. Will one day be bigger. So
Okay,
they will one day be an adult. Like our markets do seem a lot broader than we think they are.
Yeah, I'll ask one last question, and then we're being bombarded with with other questions. So I'll take that. How do you typically think about return on investment in this kind of when now you selected a bet and then you put in some money? What is the general rule of thumbs that you go by?
You got to be really careful. Accountability, fine. I try to work out what's working, but you have to be very careful with ROI is a terrible metric.
Tell me why.
The highest ROI you get for an advertising budget is to spend only $1. As soon as you spend your second dollar, your ROI starts going down.
Yeah.
If you're owner of a company or investor in a company or the chief financial officer, you do not care about marketing ROI. It's like wow, you got great ROI. I don't care about that. How much money have you made me? I don't care, because the problem with ROI is it really encourages you to do smaller, more targeted, it's an efficiency measure, right? But shareholders don't care. Particularly if you're a startup and things, Say you're a IT startup, you've been given some venture capitalists do not care about efficiency. They're like, well, I've given you money so that you can get big.
Yeah.
Now get on and get big. I don't care. I don't be small and efficient. I don't give you money for that. Like, I mean, I've got other safer options. I do that. You must grow, right? I want you to grow. And so, we've got to realize that. And also there are some things, physical availability you can look at with a sort of an ROI sort of perspective. There are certain points where if you invest in a extra shelf space or something like this, you just stop getting returns. You've point of, and so you should do that. You should optimize.
So you're basically saying, look at the revenue at the end of the day rather than like.
Oh yeah. Efficiency is all very well, but it doesn't pay bills.
No. Sales do.
Yeah. Sales and profits, right? And so if Apple wanted to stay efficient, it would not. I mean, they'd not. The latest, the Vision Pro they launched, that's probably cost them so much money in R&D, and it's going to be a small product for a while. They hope it will be big and it'll be the future. So they're not thinking about ROI. I mean, they often actually in their financial report they go, why is our net margin gone down? Oh, because we launched new products. That's okay. We don't care about our margins going down when we launch new products, as long as they are the future. ROI is an anti-future metric, so you've got to be very careful with it. I think
ROI is an anti-future metrics. That's yeah.
I have a little thing in the university textbook. And the section is called "ROI Can Send You Broke."
That's great. So Christian probably asked pretty much the same as I did here. How should small businesses apply the scientific laws of marketing for optimum results, as long as they do not have big budgets for marketing?
No one has big budgets for marketing. Show me anyone who has big budgets for marketing. I always joke that when I visit Coca-Cola in Atlanta, they moan about their limited budgets. Say you're given the job, you're brand manager for Coca-Cola. You look at your sales target for next month, it's huge. Yeah. It's enormous, right? So there's nothing, everyone has limited budget. So it's the same thing. We need to use creativity and imagination to reach our category buyers, to reach particularly our light category buyers, people who don't know about us or are mostly buying other brands. That's certainly what the law of double jeopardy tells us. So it's the same if you're big or small. I think it's even more stark if you're a new brand or a small brand. You just know you've got to acquire more customers. You've got to increase mental and physical availability.
Yeah. The
people who get it wrong are people who actually are in charge of some really, really big brands. I've had people say to me, well, we've got 100% physical availability. And I'm like, oh, I can just buy you by the blink of an eyelid. And they're like, oh, no, you have to go to the store. I'm like, well, right, well, if Coca-Cola thought that they had 100% physical availability by getting into the supermarkets, they would never have launched vending machines and, so I think big brands, for small brands, you should get it, right? You've got to increase mental and physical availability. Some big brands get quite complacent, or they say, our market research provider says we've got 100% mental availability.
Yeah.
That always makes me laugh. It's like, really? So people think of nothing else but you. I don't think even Taylor Swift does not have.
It's getting there. But what I'm hearing you, Byron, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like if to be tactical here, it's about mapping out as many possible ways to reach a qualified audience, and then selecting where the ones that presents the, let's call it, most affordable option to reach as many qualified buyers as totally possible.
Yeah. So if you're B2B, so you're B2B, I'm B2B, then you're probably going to be using things like LinkedIn, right? But you're probably not so much going to be using TikTok. Yeah. You're not going to be using TV because, it reaches too many everyday consumers. You apply the laws with your creative understanding of your industry.
Okay, that's so many to choose between. I'll go with one here, Byron. So Dennis saying, what advice would you give to a new B2B service company when starting with building mental availability? Where should he start?
Well, you have a lot of options. Usually you'll think of some. And the great thing is when you start, in many ways, some things are easier. There are some, simple options that you can do. Like if you a store, like if a store, you open a physical store, right? Like I've got a few hundred meters from me, a new gelati place has opened. The most obvious thing to do is realize you can get quite a lot of custom originally from people who live within walking distance. So why don't I go and just walk around and put a leaflet into their letterbox for all the people within walking distance, right?
Yeah.
So when you start, there are usually some things that you can think of that are easy to do. But another thing, and this applies all the time, is great creative ideas that get publicity, that get your attention, because that is the thing you're battling for. First of all, no one knows you. So Richard Branson of the Virgin Group, he was brilliant at doing this. I remember a time when this company, Virgin Airlines, had been in dispute with Sydney Airport, and they resolved the dispute. I don't know what it was about, So lawyers would have been involved, and they would have, signed a contract. And in normal business, that's what someone would have done. Let the lawyers, and they sign the contract, and that's it. And maybe there's an announcement to the business press. No. Richard Branson got on one of his planes, and he dressed up in an American Red Indian full, feathered headset thing. Arrived at Sydney Airport to smoke the peace pipe. Now, of course, he got massive coverage, all the, TVs there. That's cost him so little and gave him so much, He's got primetime TV coverage.
That's fantastic.
So creativity matters enormously, and I think when we're small, we can take quite a lot of risks and try to do, we get to lose. No one knows us. No one knows us.
Yeah.
So do something so they're going to see us.
Yeah. So the practical advice would be write down who are the people that we need to reach, and then figure out all the different methods that you can choose between to reach mental availability. And since you're new, Dennis, you don't have a lot of money, so some of the options you'll have to put in the drawer until you get a bit more.
Be aware of doing things just because you think other people should do it. So you see things like a new store open, and they go, "We need to have a loyalty program." And you're like, "What? Why? Other coffee shops have all got a loyalty program."
Yeah.
Does that mean, dude, really? Like, is that your problem? No, it isn't. You haven't got enough customers. That's the problem.
Yeah, Byron, I think I know the answer to this, but I'll just raise it anyway. How does these laws change when it's the B2B business and not the Coca-Colas, etc. of this world?
Well, if you go to the Ehrenberg Bass website, or if you Google Ehrenberg Bass, there's a big public report you can get looking at B2B, right? Looking at they apply to B2B. So that's probably a better answer now. But we have actually been surprised that there is actually, there's a lot in common. It's a lot in common. Okay, B2B will tend to use more salespeople than B2C. Although, B2C has, of course they have salespeople because they have a B2B part in them as well, right? If you work for Nestle and you have to look after the retailer, then you're in a B2B business. So unsurprisingly, there's a lot of commonality. I think one of the things that people thought was different about B2B is that they thought that the buyers would be less habitual, right? Because we really show in if you read How Brands Grow, you really do get an impression that consumers they're naturally loyal because they like to be habitual. They like back and buying the brands they buy, and there's a sort of feeling that in B2B that would be different, but it's not. Most of the time when people go for a B2B, a contract or something, they immediately think of, two potential providers. And then you ask them, have you used those providers before? Yeah. Or it's like, whoa, that's loyalty, right? You really are quite habitual still. It's the same way the consumers, when they go, I need, a new fridge or something, they only think of a few of the brands they could. Yeah.
Okay, there's so many questions. I'm trying to pick out some good ones here.
You can always connect to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And I think also some of them we can't demand you to be an expert of. But here's one. Byron, why do you think marketers are so focused on reaching specifically young audiences? Is there anything here to debunk?
Yes and no. When we look at the profiles of brands, when brands grow, they draw from all demographics, right? So you've got to reach all your category buyers. And so if your brand skews young, there'll be more young people. But, if your brand, most brands have young and old people, and you can't selectively go. But we have published a report for sponsors that does show there is a little bit for new brands. There's a little bit of a skew towards young people, and that's because they're slightly more likely to be entering the category for the first time, and so you want to get your fair share of those people who are entering the category. Yeah, and so you could argue there's a strategic thing of grabbing people when they're just looking around, right? When it's their first personal loan.
Do you think they're more likely to be also like sharing everything on social media once they become impressed by something as well?
It's not a thing that's particularly about young, but new buyers, yes. So this is another discovery. Who gives you the most word of mouth? It's your new customers.
Yeah.
Why? Because you're new. You're interesting, right? Someone who's taken out your software, right? That's the person who can give word of mouth, and you should try to encourage them. But someone who's been your customer for 10 years, whatever, they're not talking about you anymore.
We've been using the same product for 10 years.
Yeah, old news, right? I mean, if they're talking to their friends about the software that they've been using for 10 years, they're going to lose all their friends.
Yeah. Byron, here's a different angle. Do you think there's such a thing as bad press? Is any mental availability better than no?
It's a good question. Yeah, there's a lot to that. That old, what is that old adage? All publicity is good publicity as long as they spell your name right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not entirely daft. I mean, I'm not. Of course, you can get some bad publicity. That I'm thinking of, product poisonings and things like that. Pretty bad. But on that, I mean, I don't know. 20 years ago, Tylenol. There was someone who was poisoning Tylenol capsules in America, and then this person did kill people before they caught him and put him in jail. Killed people. And so you'd think, oh my God, that would have just killed Tylenol. But no, it's one of the biggest brands for, painkillers in America still. So it shows it takes a lot in the main. I think we as marketers and CEOs and things like that probably are overly sensitive to bad publicity. But what's worse than bad publicity? Yeah, no.
Yeah. Like you've been saying, cigarettes are bad for years and years, but just the mention of a cigarette, those that are kind of just stopped or like that would remind them, oh, there is a cigarette, so I'll go down and buy a cigarette.
Well, I don't think Microsoft has had much in the way of good publicity for the last sort of decade, have they? Really? I mean,
they're doing just fine.
But they're like one of the biggest companies in the world. It's quite interesting how many fairly bland brands do very well. Like Toyota, the two biggest car companies in the world are Toyota and Volkswagen. I mean, they're amazingly bland, aren't they, really? I'm not that I'm having bland because that doesn't help to get attention, but it does show that what people say, like people say, I want an exciting car, etc. It's going to, communicate my personality, etc. No, at the end of the day, they're more practical.
I guess what they've nailed is the physical availability.
Oh, absolutely.
People can afford it. It's nearby. You can go there and buy a car of a Toyota brand.
They've made sure they have the models that people want.
Yeah.
They launched so many duds. They've not got distracted. They've made, keep working it every day at mental and physical availability, make us easy to buy. Don't have someone coming to the dealership and going, have you got that type of car? And us going, oh no, we don't do that one. Yeah. I mean, it's not easy doing that.
No, it's very expensive as well.
Well, but you could argue that, their competitors have made more expensive mistakes of, launching car models that they thought were good or flash and different. That's not what people did.
All right. So if we jump back into the world of B2B, are you familiar with what's called account-based marketing?
I presume this is like, where you have...
you select a list of 100 accounts or something like that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that as a tactic? Like selecting a super small group and then just betting big on this small group becoming very interested in your product, as opposed to the very broad reach that you talked about earlier?
You need to crunch the numbers and be realistic about how many of that small group you're really going to get. So, look, it happens in B2C and it happens in B2B too. People tend to narrow their targets too much.
I think I'm one of those as well. Well, before I read your book, I was one of those as well.
It just makes it, really, really hard to, you've got competitors, and it's very hard that, you pick 100 accounts and go for those. Well, you're not going to get all 100. And if you don't have some mass activity, you're not going to get the serendipity sales of people who, you weren't even trying, but suddenly they come and buy from you because they've heard from you. I will say, particular thing on the account management, what I think the mental and physical availability story tells us for salespeople is that we probably spent too much time in the past thinking about, trying to have highly persuasive salespeople. That's good. We want really well-trained salespeople, etc. But the biggest difference between, two sales teams, which one's going to be the most effective, is the one that talks to more customers. So we should really focus on things to make our salespeople more productive. That we don't waste their time, filling in reports and doing stuff inside the company. The sales team that spends more time with more customers is going to win.
So maybe I can ask you this question then. So if you have a choice of, let's say that it's qualified reach, would you rather have a frequency of 10 with 100, or a frequency of 1 with 1,000?
1 with 1,000.
Okay, and why is that, Byron?
Because that's what research from all sorts of different disciplines, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Childhood learning theory to experiments in labs through to, looking at TV and print and things like that, shows the first exposure that you get in any time period, a limited time period, way more than the second one. So much rather hit two, this week, I'd rather my sales team spent 1 hour with two customers than 2 hours with one customer.
That's super interesting, because I think a lot of the notion in the B2B marketing world where I live is this kind of extreme high frequency amongst a selected group.
It is in BT too. Like, you watch TV tonight and you'll see the same ad multiple times.
Yeah.
Then if you watch in a month's time, you won't see that ad. That's nuts. So they do it B2C too.
Absolutely. So here's Lars, my co-founder. Let's see what he's asking. In software as a service, we often see requirements to talk to salespeople to see the product or get a price. How do you see that relative to the laws of availability?
So I don't understand. You make it a little bit hard for people to find out your prices and things?
Yeah, but I think both to see the actual product and also to know the actual price. Is that counterproductive? Yeah,
you got to be careful with it. It's a bit like with supermarkets. Some supermarkets used to have this idea of, a lot of people coming in for, say, milk or bananas or something. We'll make them we'll put them at the back so people have to, see the other stuff on their way through. Stores like that are less popular, right? What they're forgetting is that a lot of their customers need to do things quickly. And if you start putting out barriers to people, years ago, remember when newspapers had classified ads and things like that?
Yeah.
You didn't put a price on it. If you said something like ring to get the price, your response rate is so much lower. So, I understand you're trying to temper and get this out, but be very careful with that.
I guess people are thinking that the likelihood of them getting the contract signed is larger because they get the salesperson in front of the customer as opposed to letting the customer view a video and see the pricing and stuff like that.
I think those are two separate issues. One, make it as easy as possible for the customers. Do that. Right? Then the other thing is, work out how to get your salespeople in front of people. Those are two different things. Don't conflate them. If you put those two together, you can shoot yourself in the foot.
There's been a bunch of questions on this, so I'll let you answer that as well. Do your laws only apply to a world of physical marketing, or do they translate to internet online marketing as well?
I mean, it doesn't take much imagination to
no
to the digital thing. Although, I say this, not everyone has imagination.
No, but
I tell a funny story. I was in a country with a very famous brand of car sharing, and I said, so how many people have got the app on their phone? And they went, I can get that for you. We've got that figure somewhere. I went, what do you mean? It should be like everyone who walks into the office, there should be like a neon light that tells you what percentage of people in this country have got your app on their phone, because that for you is your physical availability. No one is going to call the car if they don't app on the phone. It's amazing, yeah. Oh, and have you just seen this Uber? You can now call an Uber. They've launched a phone number for people who don't have the app on their phone. They can call it like old-fashioned way, which presumably, this is probably they've realized there are some probably older people, right, who don't have smartphone, don't do that.
They have read your book, Byron.
Yeah, that's. I think that's clever. Like whatever.
Yeah.
You want to call us via the phone? You can do that. That's okay.
Okay. So we're almost out of time. So I'll do 1 or 2 more questions, and then I'll let you do the final word. Your work is often challenged long-held marketing beliefs. Your work has are there any of the recent trends or practices in marketing that you believe that are particularly misguided or overhyped?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, they're always popping up, and I think, I think under COVID, maybe because it was the Olympic Bass Institute, up on world stages and things. I saw you see stuff coming back, and it's given, but usually with a new name, but it's still the old. Probably you haven't had it yet in B2B, but in B2C, there's this thing of attention, right? And of course we don't. Of course we want attention. We want our advertising to be seen.
Yeah.
But to pay for lots more attention gets incredibly expensive, and you don't necessarily need it. We have to pull and realize, most of the people are going to see our ad and look at it for a few. Yeah, okay. So make the ad so they can understand it in a few seconds. Don't go, oh no, I need to try to find a place where I can get, them to watch for 3 minutes. It's not going to happen. So I know 20 years ago it was called engagement. Now they're calling it intention, but it's the same thing. Yeah. So we see things like that. There's lots. I could probably, we could spend another hour going through some of the misguided stuff that comes up.
Wonderful. I'll do one last question, and I'll let you go. How important is ensuring a consumer remembers your product's value proposition in order to maintain or grow mental availability?
Well, I think if they're bought from you, they'll know.
Yeah.
But what you have to do is make it easy for them to. This is a great problem that small brands have. They often, they do something like, serendipity. They go to a trade show, or they have and they get a sale. Great, but they don't get the repeats that they should, because people have forgotten about you. It's like look, I often use this example of have you ever been to a small restaurant and you loved it? Food was great, value proposition was wonderful, but you've never been back. I forget. Actually, I don't know what their name is. I can't exactly remember what suburb. Now you're never going to do that with McDonald's, right?
No.
And it's the difference in mental and physical availability. So for a small brand, you've got to go, okay, how do I make sure that people? You see this with people. That's why sampling doesn't actually work that well. You think paying people to stand at a railway station giving out, I don't know, pots of yogurt. Well, that'd be really good. People will take the yogurt, they'll eat us, and they'll love it, and they'll remember us forever. No, it doesn't. People take the yogurt, they eat it, and what yogurt that? The railway station one.
I ran by such one in the weekend. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a yogurt drink. Yeah.
Fortunately, marketing is a harder business. We have to work really hard, even when we've done that. Even someone has bought from us, so we should do follow up, and we should remind people about that we have other products.
Yeah.
That there are other ways that they can buy us.
All right, Byron, we're almost out of time, but if you feel like it, writing replies, you can go there and spend an extra hour. But one person did ask in the comments, is there any new books coming up from you guys that are worth paying attention to?
Well, our big new product is How Brands Grow for Executives. So if you want to come and see me and Jenny Robinack will be there, it's going to be amazing events. I would do that. The last book that we released was Jenny's Better Brand Tracking.
Better Brand Tracking.
Yeah. So that's, there are quite a few books, and I'm sure most people haven't read the university textbook that we have. So they're reading there if you want that.
Yeah, and then
But sometimes it's why do we do How Brands Go Live for our sponsors? Why do we do it? It's because sometimes you do need to spend a couple of days asking questions and doing practical exercise and working through what it means. You can, I mean, I'd like to think the book is great, but you know, I don't think anyone learned to be a plumber by, you know, reading a book on plumbing.
No.
I mean, a book on plumbing is useful, but you do have to do a bit more than that.
Yeah. And then last thing, Byron, if people now feel intrigued by the work that you and your colleagues do, how do they continue to learn more about you?
Go to our website, go to Ehrenberg Bass, just Google it. Yeah. marketingscience.info is the web address, but
yeah,
it's a big web. Yeah.
And then make sure to connect with Byron as well here on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Follow me. We're always telling the world about the new stuff we're doing.
Wonderful, Byron. I want to thank you.
Advertise too.
Yeah, Byron. I really want to thank you for taking the time here, and hopefully not just me, but a few other people learned about your work for the first time, so they can come and buy your book, and then later on go to your courses as well. But I would just want to say thank you for spending your time with us, and really appreciate it.
It's been fun. Thank you. It's good question.
And everyone online, go to work now and have another coffee.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.